Viruses. In real life, they kill. In movies, they create zombies. But in these games, they created superhumans. Albert Wesker, the antagonistic Chuck Norris of the Resident Evil franchise, versus Alex Mercer, the prototype. If these two met in battle, whose virus would prove superior? Let's find out. Albert Wesker was a being born, literally, for greatness. As part of a eugenics project focused on children born of high intellect parents, Albert had significant potential. Like all the dubbed Wesker children, Albert was given top-tier education. But unlike the others, Albert seemed to show particular promise. Eventually, Albert would go to work at Umbrella's Executive Training Center before becoming a researcher at the Arclay Laboratory. It was here that research on the T-virus was done alongside Albert's associate, William Birkin. Near the end of the research on the T-virus, Albert had infiltrated the Raccoon City Stars, where he worked as a double agent for Umbrella. Eventually, Albert manipulated the Stars into entering the mansion atop the Arclay Laboratory to field test Umbrella's BOWs, or bioorganic weapons. While most of the Stars died permanently, Wesker died for only a few moments. Prior to a confrontation with Star's teammate Chris Redfield, Albert injected himself with a virus recently created by Birkin, and then let himself get impaled by the Tyrant bioweapon. Following his death, Albert renounced Umbrella and sought to follow his own ambitions. Working for one of Umbrella's rivals, Albert kept the shadows until revealing himself during the Rockford Island incident. Despite his hatred for Chris, Albert would assist any organization dedicated towards Umbrella's destruction. Eventually, he obtained the entirety of Umbrella's archives and began to leak information that connected Umbrella and its founder, Oswald E. Spencer, to the events of Raccoon City. But this was not enough for Albert. Having been conditioned by Umbrella to one day seek out Spencer, Albert did so, and discovered the nature of his birth. Taking the ambition of creating a new world and instilling himself as the god of that world from Spencer, Albert goes to try and accomplish this ambition. But eventually, Albert met his end on the cusp of his victory at the hand of Chris Redfield and his partner at the time, Shiva Alomar. Albert may have failed in his goal, but he left an indelible mark in Resident Evil history. Alex Mercer was a researcher at Genentech in New York, in charge of research into the Blacklight virus. He began to become suspicious as his fellow researchers started to disappear. As a means of security, Alex took a vial of Blacklight and tried to flee. He was subsequently tracked down, released the virus, and killed. Except he wasn't. Technically. Waking in Genentech's morgue with amnesia, Alex went about trying to rebuild his memories, killing massive viral monsters, the original perfect host, Elizabeth Green, and no shortage of military and paramilitary leaders and personnel. Eventually, Alex saved New York from nuclear destruction and fully embraced his new nature. Not as a human enhanced by a virus, but as the virus, the Blacklight virus, into which Alex Mercer's personality was ingrained to the point of being indistinguishable from its own. Okay, few things to address. I know full well that Mercer's history was a bit rushed, as was Wesker's, but if I went about actually going through all the details and all the things that these two were associated with, we'd be here all day. Furthermore, there will be a few things to be addressed in regards to each one's series. Mercer will be taken as he is from Prototype 2, though a lot of the footage regarding his abilities will be taken from 1 as he's actually the playable character there. Wesker, likewise, will be taken from the games, and any kind of movie showings will be ignored, as I do not define those as being actual canon. With that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. Now, in an effort to streamline these versus matches, I will be presenting the information in a way that I feel best presents the reasoning for the end verdict, and I will alter it on a case-by-case basis. In this particular case, arranging the advantage categories from least important to most important. First, the least important category to this verdict, equipment and weaponry. Mercer carries no weapons, though he can use a great number of them, and so automatically loses this edge. Wesker is attributed with carrying a pistol with him at all times, though its few appearances following his transformation, and even fewer still near the end of his life, raises some questions about this. Wesker does take this edge, but some things to address. 1. Wesker only gets this edge because Mercer carries no weapons. 2. The fact that Resident Evil 5 Wesker fights solely with hand-to-hand combat raises concerns to if he even still carries this weapon. And 3. A handgun to Mercer is like a paintball gun to a full-grown man. But still, edge Wesker. The next category, only a bit more useful, is mind. Interestingly, these two draw a lot of parallels in this regard. They are both highly intelligent, incredibly distant and somewhat cold to those around them, crafted almost successful plans to spread a population-culling virus, have extensive experience against virally enhanced monsters, and, most interestingly, both developed god complexes. Where the true and incredibly marginal differences come are in raw intelligence and experience. Wesker was raised and conditioned to be a genius-level mind, and has had to battle through, though only occasionally, viral monsters much longer in his life than Mercer has. Mercer frankly has nothing in this category that would warrant giving him the edge. The edge in mind goes to Wesker. The second most useful category, now that we've moved into them, is physical ability. Now, the contrast between these two is actually pretty interesting. Wesker, the nimble dancer, able to dish out some pretty heavy hits, and Mercer, the fortress on feet. Wesker beats Mercer in pure speed, agility, and reflexes. But Mercer strikes back with incredible strength, endurance, constitution, healing ability, and absence of exploitable weaknesses. Wesker is able to move at speeds that make him seem like he's teleporting, flip and cartwheel like a master gymnast, and dodge bullets at point-blank range. He is strong enough to lift a large muscular man on an outstretched arm, rip metal bars from walls, and is tough enough to take getting half his face burnt off mere minutes after being bombarded by large steel supports. But he is not invincible. Far from it, actually. His virus requires a stabilizing serum for Wesker to function properly. And this serum needs to be administered very precisely. If Wesker is deprived of this serum, or if he overdoses, it will cause him pain and will throw his system out of balance, making him a much easier target to fight. But even with all that, it should be noted that Wesker only died after being submerged waist deep in lava, and then was essentially at the center of an RPG-prompted volcanic eruption. That is one of the most badass ways to die ever. Mercer gained a number of abilities from his virus as well. He's strong enough to throw a car from great distances with tremendous force, fast enough to keep pace with actual moving cars, and tough enough to take tank fire, leap from skyscrapers unharmed, and take the shockwave of a nuclear bomb and only need to eat a few birds to recover. Mercer only died by being consumed by James Heller, a blacklight host much like Mercer and created by Mercer. Looking at these two is fascinating. Wesker is quick, nimble, and able to lay on the pain when needed. But Mercer is crazy strong and crazier tough. In terms of pure physical ability, these two would be much like Luke Valentine and Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate. Wesker would be Luke, dodging punches and getting in a fair number, but Mercer would be like Alucard. He would miss a lot of shots and get hit quite a few times, but his strikes would carry more damage and he can take Wesker's assault. I see the contest of their physical ability going along the following routes. Route A. Mercer would stay on a passive defensive, blocking and avoiding as much as possible while Wesker goes on a furious assault. Eventually, though, Wesker would begin to wear down as his serum wore off. He would not be able to make headway fast enough to actually put Mercer in a dangerous situation. Now, if this happens, the moment that Wesker starts to slow down, Mercer would take his chance to counter. That is the optimistic expectation for Wesker, and also the less likely of the routes. The more likely route is that Mercer will try to get in some counters during Wesker's assault, eventually succeeding. And a punch from Mercer would be more than enough to daze Wesker and open him up for further attacks. Both of those routes, and all that we've just covered, only covers physical ability, and assumes that Mercer will avoid using his other abilities. Even with this handicap, Mercer still gets the edge in physical ability. Simply because anything that Wesker can do, Mercer can do a little bit better, with the exception of speed. Which now brings us to the most important category, and the one that ultimately decides this matchup: special abilities. Wesker's virus only grants him increased physical performance, where we've already reached our verdict. Mercer's virus, on the other hand, makes him a monster. Simply put, he is a shapeshifter. Mercer can consume the genetic material and memories of those he consumes. This gives him access to their personality traits, allowing for perfect disguise, or the acquisition of skills. Mercer has learned to drive tanks, fly helicopters, and use various military weapons in this manner. In addition to this are his extra abilities. Mercer can see in at least 2 light spectrums, one of them being heat signatures, which comes at the expense of visual distance, as well as a spectrum that allows him to see viral carriers, individuals, symptomatic or asymptomatic, that are infected with the black light virus. The real kicker, though, are his offensive and defensive powers. In terms of defense, he has a shield that can boost his defense by a significant amount, an effect that is even more prevalent with his armor. Though, unlike the shield, the armor does limit his mobility and prevents him from using a glide ability that he can accumulate. But it's in the realm of offense that his powers get really fun. He has claws that Freddy Krueger would envy and can make short work out of enemies. Hammer fists that are able to smash apart tanks in only a few hits, or clear out immediate spaces of enemies. A whip fist for snaring those hard-to-reach enemies. Muscle mass to enhance his throws and strikes. And, finally, a blade that, like the claws, makes short work out of enemies. Unlike the claws, the blade also makes short work of everything else. It should come as no surprise that Mercer gets the edge in special abilities. Wesker's lack in this regard mirrors Mercer's own when it came to weapons. But unlike the weapons category, this one is quite important, as almost all of Mercer's special abilities can hurt, impede, or kill Wesker. Edge goes to Mercer. While each combatant took 2 edges, making this seem from the outside a 50-50 toss-up, it is the value of these edges that really matters. Because Mercer took the edges in the really important categories, I honestly think that Wesker would be in for a very rude awakening in a fight with this man. This battle would be a spectacle to behold. Wesker would initiate combat, coming in close and beginning a furious assault. After a few strikes, though, Mercer would retaliate. Wesker would try to casually block, but it would fail, and he would learn the hard way that Mercer is not some average opponent like Chris Redfield was, and would take a brutal strike to the face. Following this, Wesker would be much more wary, likely pulling his pistol and shooting Mercer in the head a few times. But Mercer, unlike most of Wesker's previous foes, would be unhindered by this, and would either charge in or pull the whip fist. Either way, Wesker would dodge, thus beginning a kind of cat-and-mouse game. Mercer would likely armor up and bring out his various powers at this point, eventually relying on his hammer fist's shockwave effect to injure Wesker in a way that he can't immediately dodge. Eventually, though, Wesker would try to retreat, but Mercer, smelling blood, would pursue. The two would have a chase until Wesker escaped, or Mercer caught up and cut Wesker down. I declare Alex Mercer, the prototype, the winner of this matchup. Alright, so I know this video was a long time in coming, and it's been a very long time since the last versus match. Unfortunately, work, school, and trying to balance personal and professional life is not conducive to doing this. As much as I enjoy it, I still need time for me. I still need time to just relax and do nothing for like an hour or so. Now, I will be releasing a video pretty soon that kind of goes over the versus matches done so far and kind of addresses certain points that I was originally going to address in the chat video with Reaper. But since that's not happening, the next video will actually kind of cover the points in the versus matches that have been raised and need to be addressed. So without further ado, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any future suggestions for videos, leave them down in the comments. This has been Alpha White Wolf. I'm signing off. You keep howling now, Wolfpack.